A
On the
record.
record, okay.
Yeah, you're on the record. And
Chip, thanks for that. I appreciate that somewhat
sure.
long introduction. I'm going to show a few slides. It's great to see folks like CJ and Gina, folks that I've known of for a long time. Hey, Gina. Gina was a classmate back in the day, so it's terrific to see her again. And those of you that I don't know well, I'm really happy to be here. I'm honored to share some thoughts. I am going to attempt to show my slides. Hopefully, this will work.
Yeah, it's set up, so it should work.
All
Yep,
right, there we go.
you are up there. So we're
All
good.
right, so the plan is obviously this is informal, and I'm really intrigued by the Yale Blue Green group, and I really should join. I care a lot about the environment. I hope that becomes quite clear. And as a graduate, I'd love to engage with you all. So thank you for inviting me. Um, my talk is going to be slightly different than I think advertised in that because it's more about it's going to be very much about how we engage, how the school engages. I think I'm going to lean that pretty directly, and that is kind of my wheelhouse. So I will talk about the forest dialogue to some degree, but I want to share some other ideas about how the school engages, and hopefully I'll go through these slides. Hopefully I'll go through the slides quickly enough that there's plenty of time at the end that we can, and I would ask you to note anything down that you want to talk about further. I'd really like to have a conversation, and that, in fact, is kind of what my background is all about.
Hey
Um,
guys, can excuse me,
sure.
you put that where we don't miss anything, put some questions in the chat and we'll get
Sure.
back to them when we get back to them a little later in the talk.
Absolutely. No, that would be great. Yeah, don't lose anything. So yeah, put it in the chat. I think that would be good. So this is what I'd like to cover. Talk about the Yale Forest School or the Forest School, the new Forest School. And then two programs that fit within that, but preceded the Forest School, which is the Yale Forest Forum and the Forest Dialogue. So I'll be talking about that, but again, through a lens and kind of through this notion of how we engage on forests and why it's absolutely critical to the health and future of our forests globally, obviously nationally, but also globally. Now, this is a slide I share with my class, the students I teach on forest leadership. Um, and I show this mostly for shock value because as you can see, I have no hair. And there is a picture in the upper left that shows I actually had hair, and people are amazed by that. But I will also say, for context sake, this was the late 70s. So I was, yeah, in the late 70s. The other pictures there, one is my mentor, John Gordon, who many of you, I hope, either knew of or knew directly, was dean of the forestry school for a number of years and then worked with me on some projects before he retired. And then that last picture is my wife and I as when we were in Kenya. My wife actually runs one of the programs here. She's the director of the Hickson Center for urban ecology and also uh, the urban URI, the Urban Resources Initiative. I believe she's presented to this group in the past, so I'm not going to really talk about that. But we're pictured there with our friends that basically spent all their time at our house when we lived in Kenya. So they're good friends of ours. Um, I want to note in the title of this slide, I underscore F in the lower case because I respect the profession of professional facilitators. I am not and have not been trained as a professional facilitator, but it's what I do. I really do engage and bring people together as a part of the work in the various facets of that work. You already mentioned Chip, raised in Chicagoland. I was an activist in Northern California. That's where I really grew to love the natural environment. Particularly, I mean, so if you ever visit the redwoods and don't become, a fierce defender of old growth, then I'm not sure what you're really doing. But that was my introduction into forests and forestry, more about preservation, keeping people out, than figuring out the best case moving forward. Did my degree at Humboldt State, Peace Corps in Kenya, as you mentioned, and graduated with my Master's of Forestry from this school in 1996. That journey really was initially about passion and emotion and activism. Then in Humboldt, really wanting to understand what forest and forestry was, so a deeper understanding. And then, as I said, in Peace Corps, learning about how people are the reason forestry is centered around people. So I came to Yale, wanted to learn how to do this on a global scope. Got involved with an initiative called the Seventh American Forest Congress, which was at the time in 1996 the largest multi-stakeholder forest policy engagement process in the US. I worked directly with the facilitators of that event. It was 1,500 people in DC in a big room. That's where I learned and got the bug for how to do stakeholder engagement in a formal way, productive way that leads to change. Seventh American Forest Congress was an initiative that was kicked off by John Gordon. So I was working for the Congress. Then I was asked by John to stay on after graduation to run the Yale Forest Forum. That led to being invited to direct the Forest Dialogue. And then in 2020, the Forest School was recreated. So I'll talk more about those three things. And finally, I want to note, and it's really important, I'm not an academic. I'm not a scholar. I don't write a lot. But that's one of the beautiful things about this school. This school embraces practitioners in a way I wouldn't say 100% equal as faculty. It shouldn't be, but practitioners are very much a part of the learning process for our students. So really boots on the ground people that practice the art of forestry in its vast array are also welcome to teach here at the school. And I fit into that category as a practitioner. So just to note that. Okay, I'm not going to go into the history of the school. I'm showing this recent book, and I hope I can't see if you can all see that, but I hope if you're interested in a history of the Yale Forest School, you pick up that book. It was just published, and it gives a very comprehensive history. So here, by Yale Forest School, I'm talking about essentially the recreation of the school that happened in 2020. So I want to touch on that. So it's the new Yale Forest School, or its formal title is the Forest School at the Yale School of the Environment. I think I hope as many of you know, but if not, just to remind you that in 2020, Dean Indy Burke got the approval to formally change the name formally of the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies to change it to the Yale School of the Environment. And within that, we also created or recreated the Forest School. Formal name used to be the Yale Forest School, but now, again, because we are part of the School of the Environment, our shorthand is TFS or the Forest School. The Forest School is a school within a school. And it's easy for us to say that, but a lot of people wonder what that means, particularly in the context of Yale. So like but we're very proud of the fact that within the environment school, there are no departments. We don't have silos, particularly strong silos. There's this building I'm in right now. I'm in Marsh Hall, and all the forestry is here at Marsh Hall, and down the hill are other units. But we all are very interdisciplinary and collaborative within YSE. So by recreating the Forest School, it was more of a nod towards the legacy and tradition of forestry, but also gave us an umbrella. But at the same time, we are very much a part of, and no separation between us and the Yale School of the Environment. But it's nice because under this banner, we're able to, I think we have 12 dedicated faculty to forestry and different aspects of forestry education. Those faculty are endowed and they are a part of, officially recognized as a part of the forest school, while also being a part of YSE. It gave us an opportunity to hire dedicated staff, such as myself, and I have some other staff that work with me. We're particularly focused on forest-related programming, both internally here at the school and externally, but also one of our core mandates in the beginning was to improve our communications. So we focus a lot of time on communications. And we oversee and carry out the Masters of Forestry and Master of Forest Science curriculum. So we're responsible for that. And as I'll talk a little bit more about, we are a global hub of convenings around forests and forestry, and of course, research, which is a core part of what the school does. And I spent a lot of my time thinking about community building here within Yale more broadly, and of course, engaging with folks externally to help them understand what Yale provides in the context of forests. The first thing that I did when I became executive director was to develop the new strategic plan. It's a very comprehensive and very engaged piece of work. And if you wanted to look at it, it's the Forest School's new strategic plan is on the Forest School website, and I can give you that later. I'm not going to go into it in a lot of detail, but it's incredibly comprehensive, and we reference it at every meeting. So we use our plan as core direction for how we do our work. I'm not going to read all these words, but this is the mission of the school. I think it's really important. Some pieces here, we're place-based, we're practitioners and scientists. Forest ecology and social dynamics are all interplayed and part of our core DNA, which I'll cover in a minute. We're a hub for many different things, and we're a community. And we really focus on training leaders. And I think like many parts of Yale, many of our graduates in the past have gone on to lead or create and lead really innovative and important organizations nationally and globally. So we work a lot on leadership and leaders. And as I mentioned, that's one of the courses that I teach is leadership for forest professionals. What makes us unique, and that's why we exist, are and this comes from way back in the school's history. This notion of thinking like a forest. You know, we're known for our specialization in silviculture or stand dynamics, but also we center and really embrace the notion of people creating or fostering people-oriented foresters. People that are really savvy and know how to do engagement, are very sensitive and understand diversity in all its aspects, both human and ecosystem related, and the nature of working landscapes. That's very important to the core of what this school is about. We're very globally connected, both through our alums and through our work. And so our students, whether they focus domestically or not, they truly do leave here with an international perspective and a global view, whether they're working locally or globally. Our science is driven by ecosystem services. Understanding ecosystem service guides our forest management and policy work. And again, just to reiterate, leadership in this profession is what our students learn, and they learn from those leaders, and they contribute to that leadership directly and indirectly. So it's very important of who we are and how we work. As I mentioned, communications is at the core and was probably one of the first focal areas when we relaunched the Yale Forest School. And I want you all to see this. The newsletter that we put out every 3 months or 4 months, I guess, is the Overstory. If you're interested in what's happening forest related at the school, or Overstory is a comprehensive newsletter that connects you to everything we do, the faculty, the science, the work of the centers and programs, which I'll cover in a minute. We also have social media presence on LinkedIn, and I think the graphic showing there is Instagram. We've left X. I don't know, or the former Twitter. I don't know if you all are still there, but we used to have a big following on Twitter, but we're no longer there. So communications is a big focus for us, and obviously that's a very important way that we engage. Probably the most externally important way that we engage is through the school's centers and programs. If you know the Yale School of the Environment, there's a lot of these relatively unique clinical and professional training centers called centers and programs. Um, the Forest School has 6 that are housed here. These are organizations that basically are set up internally, mostly for the benefit either of our students or of our science, but really engage and impact in many different ways externally. Obviously, Yale Forest is our network of forests where we do all of our research, where we do a lot of research. Students do their training there, but there's also this interesting program called the Quiet Corner that engages local landowners around our property and talks with them about forest-related issues. So that's one way we engage. One of our bigger programs is the Environmental Leadership and Training Initiative, ELTI. They do tropical restoration trainings, both on the ground and via Zoom or by electronically. And you can actually get a well-recognized certificate from taking their courses. This is a year-long course, and you can be certified in tropical restoration. That's a relatively new offering. TRI, Tropical Resources Institute, is one of the oldest programs and focuses on supporting student-related research in the tropics. Urban Resources Initiative is a groundbreaking and innovative urban forestry program. Both of TRI and URI were started by Bill Birch. Many of you may remember Bill, a leading social ecologist here at the school, groundbreaking. And our newest initiative is the Yale Applied Science Synthesis program that works a lot on communicating results of science, complex science results for publics, a variety of publics. Now, the last 2 that I'll focus on, the Yale Forest Forum and the Forest Dialogue. And again, let me try to go through this quickly. Yale Forest Forum was founded in 1994 by John Gordon. John had been involved in the timber wars in a variety of ways, and felt we needed to lead on engaging on forests. And in this case, John set up the Yale Forest Forum to bring together the industry and environmental leaders, as well as community members, to talk about the future of America's forests. That's where the 7th American Forest Congress came from. And after those processes, we made YFF permanent, and I had the honor of serving as its first director during that period. Yale Forest Forum currently serves as the convening hub for the Forest School. We do a lot of different things through the Yale Forest Forum: speaker series, forums, Yale courses, publications, and our author speaker series that we do in collaboration with Orion Magazine. In fact, Yale Forest Forum is the longest continuing running speaker series at the school. We started it in 1997. And we were talking a little bit earlier, because of COVID and kind of forcing us to figure out how to share what we do online. We've developed a semester-long webinar series. And to this date, this webinar-based speaker series has attracted over 25,000 participants. This is free service or free offering by the school, and it's extremely popular. Here's an example of the few things we've offered. This up here in the upper left shows one of our conversations that was with the Forest School and Orion Magazine with some authors, Robin Wall Kimmerer and Mark McFarland. We do those maybe once or twice a semester. Down here, the wood building products is an example of a semester-long series we did on mass timber and its impact on the environment and climate. And over here on the right is a publication series that we do. And in this one, it was covering the promise and practice of community-based forestry. Some current offerings. So if anybody is really interested, you can join any of these. One, our current webinar series is on from Timber to Tomorrow. What it actually is, it's the history of forestry. It's the third part of a series. We started pre-industrial. Second part of the series was industrial forestry up to 1970, or the environmental movement. And this semester, we're covering environmental movement to current and beyond. So history of forestry, long series. If you're interested, please check that out. The middle one, Earthly Love, is another Orion collaborated talk with a couple of their authors. And as is different, we every week or so, every couple of weeks actually, the Forest School hosts breakfast for the Yale community. So all kinds of folks come up to Yale, all kinds of folks come up to Marsh and just have a really pleasant time and getting to know each other. It's another one of our opportunities to build community here at the school. And I want to note, very proud of the fact I'm leading on the development of YFF's short courses. So these are very intensive 2 and 3-day courses, very focused on specific forest related topics that are not necessarily offered elsewhere, or if they are, we do it with our own spin. So the first one coming up will be on timberland investment, but a really specific focus within that. We're doing a series of trainings on wildlife monitoring. And one that I'm very excited about is we'll be putting together a series of short courses for sustainability professionals to understand the basics of forestry and why many sustainability professionals have to deal with forests and they don't necessarily understand why. So we feel that this is our opportunity to educate on that. Okay, finally, let me talk a bit about the Forest Dialogue. So the Yale Forest Forum and obviously the Forest School, they're Forest School oriented towards our students and scholarship and research. Yale Forest Forum engagement both internally and externally. The Forest Dialogue is completely externally facing. In fact, it's considered an autonomous program by Yale. So we are based here at Yale, but we are governed outside of Yale. So this is a program that looks externally at issues related to forests. So it was established in 2000 by leaders, the big five in the NGOs and the big five in the forest industry. The basics of that is they were fighting publicly primarily about forest certification, or what sustainable forestry really means. And they got sick of it publicly, and they decided to focus more internally, or not internally, but to focus more quietly on engaging. So they created the Forest Dialogue. And at that time, I was asked by this external group, because of my work with the Seventh American Forest Congress, I was asked if I would lead the Secretariat of the Forest Dialogue, which I agreed. So Forest Dialogue was created to reduce conflict among forest stakeholders. It focuses on, as I said, discussing and defining what sustainable forest management is in practice on the ground. but also conservation of forests and how those intertwine and how we have to view things holistically. But remember, putting people at the center. The way we do our work is we do trust building, enhanced understanding, and a commitment to change. And I'm going to share a little bit more about that in a minute. We're governed by an external steering committee. This group, again, they're leaders from all different parts of the forest sector, and they advise TFD on what to do and how to do it. And we've engaged over 3,000 people up to this point. A few more orienting numbers. We held our very first dialogue in 2002. We orient around these initiatives, and those are problems or challenges that are identified in the sector. And we organize dialogues within those initiatives. So more than 20 different problems we've addressed, and we've held, at this point, this is slightly old, that number 80, it's about 90 now. We've done 90 international dialogues in 38 different countries. Sorry, I should have updated that. And we produce a lot of publications. Everything's on the Forest Dialogue website, so you can certainly find out more. This is a list of some of the issues that we've worked on in the past, just to get a sense. Obviously, we do a lot on forest and climate, bioenergy from forests, which I'll point to more in a minute, mass timber, forest restoration is another current one, tree plantations, RED, which is reduced emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. So these were issues that were identified by our steering committee initially, and then we built out initiatives and dialogues to understand the challenge and the conflict inherent in these challenges. And our process is designed to develop stakeholder agreed solutions to those challenges. This is an incomplete map, but it shows you where we typically work. These dialogues take place in these places. TFD is very much a place-based dialogue. We do dialogue in situ. You'll note that we do very little in the United States. Most everything is mostly in the tropic zone, although we've done plenty in Europe and in Russia. There's a lot here, but I'm not going to really get into it. But those of you that are process nerds, like me, this is our dialogic change model, or the way we work to make change in this sector. 3 phases: engage, explore, change. Engage is around building trust, as I mentioned. The second phase of our dialogue process is around consensus building and then facilitating collaborative action. So this is how we move through. And just in general, you can think about this as a 2-year cycle. It takes us about 2 years on an initiative to move through this process. All of our funding is external. We receive no support, 0 support from Yale, just to be clear. Finally, just a couple words about our current initiative. So one that I'm working on right now is forest restoration. The unique aspect of this initiative, obviously, there's lots of forest restoration work going on around the world, but we are focused particularly in bringing in the private sector in a bigger way into restoration efforts. We know there's a much bigger capacity, both financially and on the ground and through land, to work with the forest sector, private sector. And so this is a global initiative to do that. And by process, we've held these dialogues and industry roundtable where we brought leaders in the industry together to test this idea of if there is scope to do more. We scoped it, which means we brought stakeholders together to narrow our focus to make sure we were not biting off more than our little organization can chew. And then we went into the field. So we did a field dialogue in Indonesia. And in May, we will be doing a field dialogue in Brazil. We always talk about impact. This is part of the Bond Challenge, this initiative. And we spent a lot of time making sure that the industry was interested in engaging. So catalyzing this industry around restoration is one of the impacts. Here's the other most active initiative, and that is the bioenergy from forests. If you know this sector at all, you know this is probably one of the most controversial issues that leads to lots of conflict in the forest sector. Our focus is to reduce that conflict. There is a role for bioenergy from forests. It won't solve the climate problem, but it can help mitigate a bit. It also is not going to be a panacea for reducing climate change, but there is a path forward where bioenergy can be a transition fuel away from fossil fuels. So that's what we're exploring. Where is the sweet spot where stakeholders can agree? We've done focus groups, we've done the scoping, we did a field dialogue in Western Washington. This is our first initiative, by the way, that is all US based. Interesting. I just have to say, working with US based stakeholders is incredibly different than working with global stakeholders. Very different. Um, and our next dialogue will be in North Carolina. If anybody's really interested in this issue, you can reach out and I'd be happy to include you. If you really want, if you care about forests of the South, this might be something interesting. Our impact so far is we've brought in the Forest Service into funding on this particular issue. Forest Service doesn't typically fund this kind of stakeholder engagement. They usually do their own, but in this case, we were fortunate that they chose us as the platform. The Sustainable Biomass Partnership saw our work and became involved. They're a global group. And I'll say this dialogue in Washington gave us the opportunity to work with and see this incredibly important issue through the lens of tribal landowners. So we were hosted by the Yakama Nation. And that's a different perspective than many other perspectives. And it really grounded us into the need for finding solutions to this issue. Okay, my final slide. You're all graduates of Yale, so I just wanted to spend a minute to demonstrate how programs like the Forest Dialogue directly impact and support student learning here. Every year, TFD hires what we deem as associates. These are usually master's degree students. And they do everything related. It is our business plan to hire students as full employees, even though they can only work 10 to 15 hours a week. They do everything for this organization, so we stay relatively small. But they learn all aspects of how to run an organization like this, and they learn how to implement TFD. When they graduate, we then have TFD ambassadors all over the globe, which has been extremely important for us and our success. We do offer limited research fellowships and internships. This is usually through our steering committee. Steering committee members, again, representing different organizations, may have research questions they want to explore. So we can bring students in to do that research, and they're hosted by steering committee members. And steering committee members will bring our master's students in for their in-summer internships to do really relevant and important work. And then finally, we do training. The Forest Dialogue trains students and external audiences on how to do stakeholder engagement and facilitation. We used to run the professional skills modules here at the school, specifically for master's students. And we give, and that picture that you see below next to the facilitator training is during during our dialogues, when it's appropriate, we ask students to facilitate those sessions, these small group works, not the larger process, but small groups. So you can see in the back of the room, there are two students that are leading the facilitation of one of our breakout groups. So students are very, very much a part of what TFD does. And again, it's just another way that we engage. That's it, Chip. That's what I got. As I said before, there's so much more to talk about. Unfortunately, there's not a ton of time, but I thank you again for the opportunity to present. And unless anybody wants to ask anything specific
Yeah,
about.
well, I think I want to first thank you very, very much. Fascinating. I mean, forests are certainly under so much strain and stress now all over the world. have been for centuries. But the fact that we have schools and institutions like Yale that are focused on it and getting incredible resources and bringing people together to solve some of these problems is great. Um, your story is just so fascinating in and of itself. Thank you so much. I've got a question, but I'll leave it to others to ask some first. If anybody wants to ask Gary any questions.
Well, I have one that's a bit of a setup question, if it's okay.
Mm.
Sure, go ahead.
Great. I mean, I was looking at the list here. I can't tell whether this is mostly graduates of the school or not, but I think it's relevant to graduates of the school as well as Yale graduates generally. There's always a question, Gary, about whether the school's given up on forestry. They changed their name, they give school the environment. And yet, when I've been back there, I was class of 1980. My understanding there are more courses on forestry, more faculty in the for on who teach forestry classes, and more MFs, which for the those who don't know is a Master of Forestry, which is a degree you used to only be able to get if you had a undergraduate training in forestry or sufficient work experience. So my general question is forestry alive and well at the school? I think you've explained that already, but maybe explicitly. And then my other question is, well, so if that's true, what do you get when you hire somebody from the school who isn't a forester?
Mm.
And you don't have to answer that one, second one, if you don't want, but is
Well, I
forestry alive
think
and well?
forestry is absolutely alive and well. And then, obviously in my position, I'm essentially paid to say that, but I truly mean that. As an alum of the school, when it was discussed about changing our name, myself and many other alums really got concerned that, okay, you pull forestry out of the name, we become, some anachronism, and many schools around the globe have pulled out of forestry. And it gave us an opportunity to refocus and recommit and really lean into what we feel is an incredibly important holistic program in forest and forestry that we have here at the school. So you're right. Not only, I would say, we were in the aughts or in the teens of the 20s, we were really wondering, maybe 10 students, 9 students were graduating with an MF, but we're back up to where we want to be, which is between 18 and 20 every year. So it's gone from strength to strength, I have to say. And we're under the leadership of Dr. Mark Ashton. And if you know Mark, you're not surprised. But if you don't know Mark, he is loved by students. Him doing this kind of thing is unusual. He doesn't love to put himself out there, but he loves to educate students and work with students. So I'm happy to kind of be Mark, the yin to Mark Yang. I don't know if that's the way I don't know if that's real, but I'm happy to work with Mark on that. And in terms of, and it's funny, because also a graduate from the school, even if they're not MFs, we have forest experts that choose to do MEM all the time. They are professionals, they understand forests in a deep way, but they may not have a master's of forestry. They're very competent. A lot of our international, see that, sorry, I'm going to stop in a minute, but our Masters of Forestry is accredited by the Society of American Foresters. And if you're going to do forestry in the US, that's important. If you're not doing forestry in the US, but forestry somewhere else, that accredited degree isn't as important as we may think here in the US. And the MF is more constrained and the MEM gives you more flexibility. So some students are just as dedicated to forestry, but they choose to do MEM.
We've got two hands up, so we'll go to Gina first and then Anne and see where we are on questions. And if not, we'll do introductions around the room.
Hey, Gary. Good to see
Hey,
you. It's
awesome.
been a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
Yeah, so greetings from unseasonably warm Southern California. Way too hot already. So I have a couple questions, but let's start with this and the second one if there's time. So my question is around technology and the vast explosion of data. And I know your focus is, and the programs have grown amazingly. It's incredible to see all the different projects and dialogues that are going on around the world. How does technology come into it? Is it seen as beneficial, like strongly beneficial to managing these challenges and managing the resources? I'm curious to know how it comes up. And second, I'm just curious to know why there hasn't been more US focused projects. But yeah, I want to also give others a chance to ask questions. So thank you.
Gina, awesome to see you. You always ask insightful questions, always challenged me, that's for sure. So you're a semester early on your question, and I'll tell you why. Next semester in the fall, we're running a series on innovation in the forest sector. So it's going to really drill down deeply. It'll probably be 14 speakers that are going to cover different aspects. Obviously, from my experience, the development of the technology of Zoom and these engagement platforms have been crucial for us to be able to grow and grow rapidly. Using drones to plant trees is I think it's weird, but I think people really enjoy it and they like it. We have a faculty member here who is producing a more durable plastic-like substance out of wood that also biodegrades, so it doesn't last like plastic. There's tons of innovation in this sector. One area that the Forest Dialogue covered directly was, gene splicing and all that. What was that? Biotech trees, or Franken trees, as they were called.
Wow.
That is one issue that after a couple dialogues, we decided, you know what? There's no common ground here. This is not a good place for this platform, because the people wanted to fight. They didn't want to seek solution at that time. So yeah, innovation in this sector is rapid, and not as mass timber is the coolest thing ever. I love mass timber. So just to celebrate that too. But tune in, Gina, in the fall, because that's when we'll cover things that I think you'll find really cool.
Great,
Anne,
thank you.
Anne, are you still on?
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to find the mute button. Hi, I'm a Yale College graduate and not as familiar with all of this, but definitely interested in forests. And so my question is, and I have not dug around in the Yale Forest Research's sources really. Are there resources for small scale forest owners in your publications or whatever, as well as like the big companies and that kind of thing?
So I would orient you to the work of the Forest Forum. Even the Forest Dialogue does, every dialogue we do, we have smallholders, family forest owners as a part of it because they're an incredibly important voice. But again, most of that work is, outside the US. But almost every offering of the Yale Forest Forum is open to anybody. You don't have to be affiliated with Yale in any way. Obviously, if you're Yale grad, that's terrific. But if you go on the Yale Forest Forum website, you can see the different offerings. Obviously, these are through platforms like Zoom. There are in-person opportunities, but you would have to be in Northern Connecticut if you wanted to engage as a small landowner. Again, that's through our Quiet Corner initiative. There are a lot of other organizations that serve and support small landowners. I think out where you are, extension foresters, other universities may have ways that they engage. So I encourage you to look at that.
Paul.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Hi, Gary. First of all,
Hi, Paul.
thanks for a really terrific presentation. I knew something about the school, but now I know a whole lot more. I dropped and I'd love to talk to you about 4 or 5 books I've read on the subject of forests, from things like The Wild Trees, about your alma mater, to the mother tree. But that's not my question. Out here in California, Northern California, I'm in Berkeley. We're losing about 1 million trees to wildfire per year. There are initiatives that would have us with controlled burns, maybe getting to 400,000 acres a year, but we're light years from that. Also, the whole notion of selective thinning of national forests. Is there anything that's going on with the Yale Forestry School that focuses in particular on this ecosystem?
Yeah, the short answer, short answer is yes. So we have a course on wildfire that's taught here, and it focuses a lot on the Western system. So Western ecosystems like California and Oregon and Washington. Yes, we're thinking about it. We have every year we send a forestry crew out there to learn about wildfire. Controlled burns are something we teach, boots on the ground kind of teaching in person. Students get to light fires, which some really like. So that's important. Obviously, as you know, there's lots of organizations out there working on it. One thing that I have worked on personally is this bioenergy work, and that was one of the core drivers of the discussion in the Pacific Northwest, is that um, if you pull out the excess woody material that is leading to this wildfire and channel it into the bioenergy market, that creates an incentive, both financial and environmental incentive, to do that kind of work without risking the health of the overall forest. In fact, it improves the health to do that. So that's another area where we're working on, is to create incentives to manage forests in a way that will reduce wildfire.
Thank you.
Bob.
Great talk, Gary. I'm wondering if there's any collaboration between anybody in the forest faculty and the School of Architecture around attempts to build larger and larger buildings, mostly with wood product skeletons. In the chat, I put a link to one of several videos. This one is about a so-called skyscraper or plyscraper that's under permitting, I believe, in Minneapolis or somewhere in Minnesota, but there's a bunch of them. Um, is anybody thinking about this? What if it really took off? Would it change anything about the forestry part of it, not just the construction and design part of it?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked, because that's certainly directly something I've worked on personally. So there's a collaboration between the forest side here at the school, industrial ecology side here at the school, and the architecture school. And it looks at mass timber. And just as you noted, our focus within this project, actually encouraging the development of mass timber as a climate mitigation strategy, but also, as we all know, from an architectural standpoint, these are warmer, these are better structures. What was I going to say? Anyway, from the forestry side, the concern comes from, okay, what if mass timber takes over the world? What if everything we do is made out of mass timber now? Is that going to place an undue demand, an unscalable, unattainable demand on our forests? So the Forest Dialogue actually did a full initiative on mass timber and explored that question with stakeholders. And for the most part, one is the scale up is pretty slow, as you know. Obviously, much more advanced in Europe, much slower in the US because of bureaucracy primarily. But the future really does hold great opportunity for bigger I think 21 floors is where they are now with all wood buildings. And our forests can handle it, particularly our intensively managed forests. We don't need to convert forests over intensive management. Our current intensively managed forests can handle it primarily because advancements in growing, but the fact that the pulp and paper market has collapsed, more or less. So there's a lot of standing plantation forests that you don't want to do anything else with than utilize that is available to come online for mass timber. So it's the other barriers. It's not the forest. At least at foreseeable future. There, like I said, there may be a future. One of our architects said, "Oh, we're going to have to build a new Paris every year. You know, something the size of Paris to replace structures." We could probably handle that.
We have time for one more short question. We've had so many questions, we have no time to introduce ourselves, but you'll just have to come back next month and do it again. Cyril, it's the last question, and then we're going to close up shop.
Sure, we could even have this be a lead out to the end of the day, but I was wondering whether, Gary, you'd had any chats with Canary Webb. She was a Yale Med School graduate who went on to found Health and Harmony, which found that by providing healthcare services in Indonesia to people who are next to the forest, they no longer had a big incentive to deforest the area or poach. And she's been expanding that elsewhere. And I was hoping that you guys had a chat.
CJ, by the way, good to see you. No, we have not. I haven't met that person. We do a lot of work in Indonesia, and obviously, health and forests is a really big and important issue. There is a lot of research out there on how people's engagement with the forest at various levels improves their health. And like you said, a great outcome is the fact that they will protect it more than they'll exploit generally. If people are pushed away from their ancestral lands or their traditional lands and they feel like they're being made the other, then it's easier to exploit. But when you bring them back in or bring them in for the first time, we also see this, CJ, in New Haven with our urban forests. There are active collaborations between URI and the medical school here. So they're really doing some interesting things on health and forests. So thanks for that question, because I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think Canary was one of our speakers just a couple of months ago. She was
Awesome.
amazing, just amazing. Well, I want to thank everybody very, very much for joining us today. Gary, that was an incredible talk. I learned an awful lot, and glad to hear that the Forest School is doing so well inside of the School of the Environment. And we hope that you will get involved with us and maybe participate in other ways again.
Definitely. And again, thank you all. It's so great to meet you or see some familiar faces that I haven't seen in a while. It's really terrific. And I think this organization, like I said, I haven't been a part of it, but I think I want to be. So thank you for including me.
Oh, there's some really amazing people. So
And I encourage everybody that wants to engage through the Yale Forest Forum. That's the best and easiest way. Just check out our website and see what we're doing. So
great.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
thank you.